Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall, joined by Adam this evening for a change on the Tuesday show. Johnny Bisbee was meant to be. We're just getting let down every day, aren't we, man? I mean, Sky yesterday, Johnny Bisbee today. I mean, should just me and you just do them all going forward?
Yeah, Sodom. That's what I say. Also, what's the point? I mean, they're an outrage, all of them. I mean, Sky falling asleep. Bisbee
Johnny,
has work. I mean, what's that all about?
that's the
Working?
commitment.
Like,
That's the commitment.
that's not important. Unbelievable.
Well, we will march on. The originals, the original here, but one of the first originals, really, I suppose. Adam, with your
Two-thirds of the original. The
2/3.
other one couldn't get here because of work. Unbelievable again. I mean,
This work thing,
stick to death for these people.
Just handcuffing us, man. I mean, it's going to be the same show as normal, the good, the bad, the ugly. However, we have the quick fire news to begin with, and we're talking about work. A lot of people have been at work today because it is the trade deadline day. Any breaking news that comes, we will comment upon. The big trade of the day is Marshall Lattimore in the last half an hour, cornerback of the New Orleans Saints. Him and a fifth rounder has been traded to the New Orleans Saints by the Washington Commanders, who have sent a third, a fourth, and a sixth rounder. In the last 5 minutes, the Pittsburgh Steelers, in less exciting news, have sent a 2025 fifth round pick to the New York Jets for Mike Williams, wide receiver. Another wide receiver that was dealt was Jonathan Mingo from the Carolina Panthers. He was dealt with him, and a seventh was traded to the Carolina Panthers by the Dallas Cowboys for a fourth round pick. Khalil Herbert, running back for the Chicago Bears, has been traded to the Cincinnati Bengals for a 2025 seventh. And a big one that everyone was keeping an eye on with the Detroit Lions trading for Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns. So that's a Smith, and a 2026 seventh rounder has gone to the Browns for a 2025 fifth rounder and a 2026 sixth rounder. More trades hopefully coming, and we will break them as and when. Or outside of the trades, so former head coach and offensive guru in a lot of people's minds, Norv Turner, has returned to the Las Vegas Raiders. His son is also there as well, who is doing something there in capacity as well. So very interesting move by the Las Vegas Raiders, who fired their offensive coordinator Luke Getsy over the weekend. So yeah, lots of trades. Hopefully more trades to come. The Lions figuring out a defensive end position, sort of like not replacement, but sort of just someone to keep up with not having Aiden Hutchinson there. I mean, the Commanders, apparently rumors have been that a lot of teams, a lot of players are very interested in moving to the Commanders because of how well they're going this year and what an exciting team they are, especially with Jane Daniels at the helm there. But we'll start off with the good this evening, and that is obviously Derrick Henry, running back for the Baltimore Ravens, achieving his 100th career touchdown over the weekend in their win. I mean, now he's up to 101 touchdowns on his career because he also scored 2 in that game. And I mean, he's been absolutely amazing for going to the Baltimore Ravens, and he's been a player that I think there's been doubts about him with his injury history. Gareth, called you Gareth then. Gosh, how offensive is that? My mind's all over the place. Anyway, Adam, sorry. There was a lot of moments where I feel like people have doubted Derrick Henry because of his injury history. And obviously there was talk of him going to the Dallas Cowboys, and then he joined the Baltimore Ravens. And I think people weren't as excited as they should have been about him going, just because there has been that injury history. But what a revelation he's been for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were a little bit excited, weren't they? Because it's a team that likes to run the ball, and they've shown that over the years that they like to run the ball. And you've arguably got one of the best running backs that's been around. So it's one of them things where it's like I think there was a bit of excitement there. I don't think anyone thought that this was going to be what would happen exactly. I think they thought he would do well, but given his age and just the fact that most normal running backs would drop off about now and probably a couple of years before, I think that there was kind of a feeling that he was going to do well. The situation was great for him. But was he really going to be able to do this sort of the stuff that he's doing at the moment? He's already gone over 1,000 yards. He's had 11 touchdowns, and we've just had week 9. So we're halfway through the season. Now, I'm not saying that means that he's going to get 2,000 yards and 22 touchdowns, but that is the pace that he's at the moment. So this is if he can keep fit, there is a potential for that to happen. And yeah, he's just been great all season. Looks really, really good. Favourite for Offensive Player of the Year, as he should be. I think that the only person in the conversation is Saquon. Personally, I don't think there's anyone else. I don't think any of the wide receivers have been particularly fantastic, whether that be because of injuries or anything else. But yeah, I mean, he's really done incredibly well there. And I think because he is a bit of a freak athlete, I think there's probably a very strong chance that he does sort of push on to like 2,000 yards in the season and does just keep this going, because there's no reason why he won't.
I think what makes this so good with the Ravens is usage, because I feel like everyone keeps going on about it at the minute because of how bad the Cowboys are running the ball. Like, oh, Henry was out there and they should have got him. I don't necessarily think they would have used him correctly, to be honest with you. Like, situations do matter. He's gone to a Ravens team who has had a very underrated offensive line for a long time. It is an underrated one. It is a pretty decent O-line. They've been together for a while as well. You've got a quarterback who can run really efficiently as well, so can take the load as well. You've also got a quarterback who is showing this year he is more than a running quarterback, and he's got an incredible throwing capability now. Yes, we've critiqued his stars in the wide receiver room, with we know that Zay Flowers is pretty decent, but he's not elite like Justin Jefferson. But Rashad Bateman's getting plenty, but now Aguilar even has a good moment or two. Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, like actually no one's elite on that offensive passing unit, I suppose, but they're all very efficient. They're all very good and very efficient. And I think, they've sort of eased him in the season, didn't they? They didn't really completely lean on him. And I don't think nor they should lean on him, though he is incredible. I don't think they should, because I think that's what's gaining this 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns now, which sounds silly because, using more, he would get 2,000 yards and touchdowns. But using more, there comes risk of injury, predictability. There is teams that are simply amazing at the run as well. And, when it's complementary offense, that's what I think makes this Ravens team one of the Super Bowl favorites. It's complementary offense. They're doing it well in the passing game, and they're the best rushing team in football at the minute. They've combined 1,727 yards, fourth in rushing touchdowns. They're first in yards per attempt at 5.9, first in first downs at running as well with 85. Like that's what complementary football does. It gives both passing and running a great opportunity, and he's been incredible. And I think you're right. Saquon's the only guy with him that is Offensive Player of the Year caliber for me at the minute. Do you think he jumps into the stratosphere of MVP caliber? And I know it's like a quarterback award. I do get that. But the last non-quarterback MVP winner was Adrian Peterson in 2012. He got 2,097 yards, 12 touchdowns. That was in 16 games. Bear in mind, the last time that Henry won Offensive Player of the Year was in 2020, and he got 2,027 yards and 17 touchdowns in that year.
Yeah, I think for him to be in the conversation for MVP, I think you have to hit 2,000 yards. Definitely, I think that's a given for that's what he would need to do. And I think that on top of that, he would have to probably get close to 20 touchdowns for the season as well. He's on 11. He'd have to get close to 20. I think that them sort of numbers would be incredible numbers. And even if he did that, I still think he probably won't win it, because it just goes to a quarterback all the time. I literally just had a quick look at the betting odds for MVP, and he is currently 15th in the betting for
Wow,
MVP.
really?
Because no, sorry, 16th in the betting for MVP, because the 15 guys ahead of him
Of
are all
course.
quarterback.
But
And
my problem is like I think he, 7 or 8 I could believe, 6 I could believe, but the problem is it's just so predictable, isn't it? It is a quarterback award, and
yeah,
that is really annoying. But it is the most valuable position in football. But I mean, the only one I remember in the last few years where I was like, I think I think you're close. That's close. Is when the McCaffrey had the 1,000, the
yeah,
1,000 receiving, the 1,000 rushing. Like that was I was like actually he's doing both.
yeah,
He's doing both. Like he's doing both at an elite level. Like that's impressive. Like, okay, 2,000 yards rushing is the same as the 2,000 yards across rushing and receiving in terms of numbers. But yeah, that's seriously impressive to do both, to be stable in both of them categories. Like, so
yeah.
I break the mold, NFL, break the mold.
Yeah, it kind of goes to show a little bit how much of a joke these season awards are, and that it's just a common thing now, that this is what it is. And I mean, like I said, I can only tell you from the what the betting odds are and stuff like that. But personally, I mean, how do you have Kyler Murray ahead of him in the betting? How do you have CJ Stroud this year, who has struggled, ahead of him in the betting? How do you have Brock Purdy ahead of him in the betting? These guys where it's just a little bit like not really. When you think of, don't get me wrong, they're playing well at times and they're doing okay for their teams, but I say that they're more important at the moment than what Derrick Henry is to the Ravens. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of them things. It's just what it is, and I'd be surprised if anything changes. But offensive player of the year, I would be, like I said, I think it's going to take an injury or probably a significant drop off from Henry, and at the same time quite an increase on top of what Saquon's already doing, in order to be able to basically get the award off of Derrick Henry. Yeah,
because he's next week. I would maybe if he had a massive game next week, he beats the season last year already. He got 1,000. Exactly. He got 1,167 yards, 12 touchdowns last season in 17 games. And I say injuries. He played. I mean, 2019, he played 15 games. 2020, he played 16. 2021, he played 8. 2022, he played 16. 2023, he played 17. So, like,
he hasn't been that injury really. I mean, he had one that one where he only played 8 games in the season. That's the real season where he dropped off a lot because of the injury. But he's not been too bad. But he just it goes to show that as great as he was for Tennessee, now that he's in a team with better weapons around him, it still you see more of him. It's almost like they're showing off his attributes better, and so he's in a Super Bowl contending team. So
I mean, I'm confident saying this team gets the AFC Championship at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they don't get to the AFC Championship, then it's a real letdown. I think you're looking at Ravens Chiefs. I really do. I don't really see much else happening. Although there are a couple of teams that I think have got potential to do something, but I just feel like it won't be the offense of the Ravens that lets them down. Let's put it that way. It's like it won't be Derrick Henry. It won't be Lamar Jackson. If the Ravens fail, it'll be because defensively they just can't stop the pass. So, but at the moment,
it wouldn't shock me if they sort of did a Chiefs thing where got all the way when our offensive line is terrible and that's why we lost. Next season we'll get loads of offensive linemen and actually we'll be fine because that's actually our weakness. It wouldn't shock me if the Ravens maybe crash out or get embarrassed in the playoffs and go, well, we're the most complete team. Next year, we're going to go and sign a really great cornerback and a good safety, or trade for one, or we're just
that would make
going to get
sense.
so much depth in that position because they've not
Mm.
got bad secondary players. They're just, I think, just not hitting the mark this year so much. They're almost like the cog of it isn't turning within the machine, isn't it? Isn't it? It's a bit strange.
Yeah. It
So
does seem a little odd, but yeah, they aside from their secondary,
yeah.
they've got everything they
Babies,
need.
yeah. I'm confident that they're going to get to the AFC Championship, and the only team that I think challenges them, because I think the Chiefs get there, is the Bills for me at the minute. But yeah, we'll just have to see if they can continue their
I think there's
momentum.
one other team, but we'll keep that till the end.
That sounds good to me. Let's move on to the bad for this evening, and that is, unfortunately for Brian Branch, going to be all about him. And he was ejected in the Detroit Lions win against the Green Bay Packers, the 24-14 win, which you watched the whole game. I admittedly have not done a huge amount of research. I've seen the hit. I've not seen like the context around the hit. I've just seen the hit in itself. And then I've researched a bit about why it was called and this stuff with other factors, I suppose. So yeah, he got ejected for a helmet-to-helmet hit with Bo Melton. What's significant about this is that it wasn't the on-field officials that ejected him. It was recommendation from New York. Obviously, they review everything in their plush tower in NFL New York and the officiating tower there. We know that. Everyone knows that they go to New York for stuff. It's the equivalent of anyone who's new to the NFL VAR, I suppose. So give me your aspect of it. Give me your synopsis of this, because I need a bit from you to then probably build a bit more for me.
So when I was watching it, it's clearly helmet to helmet hit. It's clearly what's happened, and it's a penalty, isn't it? I mean, that is what a helmet to helmet hit is, and it's a penalty in the NFL. Now, if this was in the college game, it would be targeting, and he would be ejected from the game. That's what would happen. But in the NFL, that's not what they do. It's only if they feel like there is genuine sort of like intent to endanger someone. Now, what was interesting was not too far before that, like probably say like half an hour before that, the tackle on Chris Olave, where you had the two guys coming in together and took him out, and he ended up essentially being knocked out and having a concussion. That, I would argue, was a hell of a lot more dangerous than what happened to Bo Melton. Now, because it's a head-to-head hit, and they're trying to make it safer, aren't they? Everything they are doing now is about trying to make this safer for the players. I think what they've done is he's gone in hard, because he did go in hard on him, helmet to helmet, and they've just gone, we're going to make an example of this guy. And it just kind of felt a little bit over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I think pretty much everyone else felt like that as well. I think there was probably a bit of surprise in the stadium. I think what you heard from the commentary, there was surprise. And I just think I think it's just a bit over the top. And they probably should have stayed with the on-field officials, because I think the on-field officials pretty much got it right. It was a penalty. They got the yards for the penalty, and carry on.
Yeah, but Bo Melton continued in the game, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Because like I said, I've seen I've only seen the hit. I've just seen the hit. So like I completely agree with you on the hit wise. Flag all day long. We're in this very, very hard sort of abyss of this, where you don't know about doing it or what it's like until you're in the moment. or until you're there. And a lot of the officials have played, I assume, have played sport within their life. And unfortunately, sport is 100 miles per hour on occasions. And sometimes it's hard. It's hard to adjust. Now,
Well, certainly in this sport it is, isn't it? I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. I mean, my big thing, I always said this. So I was a real big sort of, no, they've done something wrong. You know, when the rule came in about the sack and the player landing on top of the player, and it
yeah,
was,
yeah,
sort of that quite egregious. Now, when that came in, a lot of people were getting flagged for it. Loads of
yeah,
defensive ends were getting flagged for it. Loads of defensive tackles. The guys who weren't getting flagged for it were Aaron Donald, TJ Watt, players like that, because they knew, well, when I'm going down, I need to roll. And I always
yeah.
said, well, you don't see them players getting flagged for it, and it's because they're elite. It's because they're clever and they know how to. They have adjusted their game. The rest of these players need to adjust their game, and I think that's. I still stick by that opinion, but with that ruling, I suppose. But with this ruling, I completely. I think it should be in place. But an ejection, I think, like you said, it's strong, and I mean, in terms of the ramifications of it being potentially game changing. Like, did it feel to you as a Packers fan that it could have been the line, but obviously the Lions go and win, so you don't really know the argument for that. But did it feel to you like, as a Packers fan, did you go, well, we've got a chance here if we just keep going over the top to where Branch would usually be,
So for me personally, no. Although I would come out and say that obviously without Aiden Hutchinson being fit, he is now your best player on the defense, I would say.
Oh yeah.
But no, I wouldn't say it was game changing to me. However, I think there are people out there who would say that they felt there was the potential for it to change. The reason that I personally didn't think it was game changing is that I felt like our quarterback wasn't fit and was struggling the whole way through and probably shouldn't have been out there. So I had a kind of different opinion on the whole thing. But I understand that people would say, well, if you lose your best defensive player, that's going to have an impact, because it will.
No, of
So
course. Yeah, of course.
that's fair enough. I just, like I say, I just think it was a little bit over the top, and I think that in a way the NFL are kind of in this, like you say, it is a bit of a tricky situation. You can't really do too much with this particular thing. It's a helmet to helmet hit. It's not always intentional. All you need is that one of the other guy, one of you two lowers your helmet just slightly, and then all of a sudden what was going to be a perfectly clean tackle is no longer a perfectly clean tackle. So it's a very difficult one to do. When it comes to the sack thing, it's technique, isn't it? At the end of
Yeah.
the day, TJ Watt, Aaron Donald, as you said, they brought in maybe a different technique that they learned, and so they didn't get flagged for it. And so that's fair enough. But on this one, it's very, very difficult, because you can come out and say it's technique, you should tackle exactly at the right spot. But all you need is the guy to think, oh God, he's going to take me out, and lower his head slightly. And then you've caught him on the helmet. And it's like, so it's a much more difficult one to try and work out, this one. I just think that you're now in a position where, because of what's been happening in college, and a lot of people don't like it, what's been happening in college with the way that these players have been ejected from the game. I think if you're going to have helmet to helmet, you're going to have to call it targeting, and then you're going to have to take them out of the game, or you just got to stop the whole thing and go, it's part of the game. That's the end of it. So that's where the NFL are. It's one of the two. They've got to go down.
You can't be half in, half out, can you? You need to
No,
be
because
like all the way in
what's
or
going to
all the way
happen.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, because you know what's going to happen next week. There will be a helmet to helmet hit, or in a couple of weeks' time, there'll be a helmet to helmet hit, and he won't be ejected. And everyone's going to come out and go, "Why wasn't that one ejected? What's the difference?" And that's where the problem comes in. So it's really difficult.
Where do you land on the whole commentary thing with this? Because immediately Tom Brady, who's had his critics, admittedly, this season, but I think like anyone doing that sort of job, you've got to give him time to. I know he's the greatest quarterback ever, but this is a different job. Like, he needs to.
Yeah.
But he was very critical of the call, Dean Blandino, who's the reffing broadcaster, I suppose, ex-official, was quite critical of the call. Then they sort of backtracked a little bit later in the game, and Blandino sort of gave the explanation is intent doesn't matter, because I think they were all saying, like, it didn't seem very intentional of being that aggressive, but he explained that the New York ruling was, intent doesn't matter, it's helmet to helmet, which again, it's a little bit like we've just said, you either go all in or you're all out. Like, it's not how do you know behind their masks and how far away, whether that person in their brain has gone, I'm going to absolutely blast this guy here, or but I'm just making a tackle. You don't know that in that player's psyche. But there was rumors about the NFL, because obviously Brady now has a bit of a stakeholder within the Raiders organization, and has been publicly criticized the officiating crew, and not just publicly criticized, did it on the actual broadcast, which obviously the whole nation hears. There's rumors that he might be fined. He's not going to get fined, funnily enough. But where do you sort of land on that? Because for me, I think we've always loved the commentators who are honest in every sport. We like the commentators who are real. John Madden, the original guy in the NFL who was a real guy. Like Gruden, for all of his faults towards the end of his career, he was liked because he was a straight talking guy. Like, where do you land on that? I know it's a bit arbitrary. I know it's a bit.
So from what I can gather, the reason that Tom Brady has got himself in a bit of hot water with the NFL is because there is a bit of I don't know if it's an actual rule or whether it's kind of a bit of an unwritten rule, where basically owners of teams do not criticize the officiating, is essentially what it is. And that's basically what they're saying. I mean, he came out and said, I don't love that call at all. I mean, obviously that's a penalty, but to me, that has to be serious intent in a game like this. See, now, first of all, a game like this should be irrelevant because it's like any game, but, he's doing commentary, so I'm not going to have a go at him about every little thing he says.
Yeah.
I have no problem with him coming out and saying what he thinks. And I think that's where that's what, like you said, is what you want.
And actually, that's been the criticism of him by
some of the first games
have been saying that he's clearly holding back.
Yeah,
and that we actually want him to be more like on the field, Tom, and be that aggressor and be that, like, you know what I mean?
I mean, some of the first games that he did, just awful. Just sort of like just not talking too much, almost like he's not really understanding what he's there for, which is basically like, once the main, the actual your number one commentator has done all the build up, you basically come in and you give a quick opinion of what has happened and you get out as quick as possible. That's exactly what he's there to do, and he really struggled with that at the beginning, and shockingly, as he keeps doing it, he's getting better at it. That's not a surprise. So I think he's going to be fine as a commentator. He just needs time to do it. But yeah, I mean, this sort of thing, it really doesn't matter, really. I mean, he's coming out and saying that he didn't agree with it. How dare he not agree with something? It's a bit crazy, and it's just like, I think that he, like all commentators, should be entitled to basically give their opinion on what they've seen, because that's what he's being paid to do by Fox, isn't it? I mean, that's the whole point. So I think that he should be entitled to do that. I mean, they might come out and say, but he's got a minority ownership in the Raiders, but at the end of the day, so does that really make much of a difference when it comes to him doing commentary on Green Bay versus Detroit? I mean, what does it matter? And I just think that it's kind of, it's almost like New York and the NFL maybe thought that they went over the top a bit, and now they're trying to be a little bit like, oh well, don't say, because of the reaction from people like Brady, they're like, oh God, what have we done?
Maybe we've
And
messed up here.
I'm wondering if there's a bit of that in it.
Yeah, there's certainly one thing for certain. That is probably that Tom Brady has gone back and watched the tape on his own commentary, and will probably learn from this because he's an absolute tape enthusiast. It's to the ugly, and it is very ugly for one New Orleans Saints and now Dennis Allen, who has subsequently been fired from his position as the head coach for the Saints after their loss this weekend to the Carolina Panthers 23-22. That's making them 2-7 on the season. Obviously started off in crazy hot. They were 2-0 to start the season, beating the Panthers 47-10 and the Cowboys 44-19. They also did have a close game, but they lost in week 3, which was 12-15 against the Philly Eagles. Been a bit of a downhill battle ever since. Obviously had their injuries with Derek Carr. But yeah, this team's not looking, I mean, it ain't looking great. I mean, they've got rid of Allen. Where do they go from here?
I mean, it's a really tough situation at the Saints. I also think that it's tough for anybody who comes in here. It's really difficult. As you say, they're 2-7. They're one of the worst teams, aren't they? I mean, the number 1 pick next year is on 2 wins. So at the moment, yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. It's really tough. I don't know, to be brutally honest, where they go. It's a complete mess, and everyone. So whenever anyone talks about the cap situation that they have, that's what they always blame it on. Oh, they're really bad on the cap. They got no money, but they have really they haven't drafted well. Really, over the last few years, they've really struggled in the draft room, and that is part of the reason that they're struggling.
They're always the team on draft nights. I always think where you go, what, who?
Yeah,
they're the what, who
team.
Yeah,
they are. There's
always one team. There's always a couple of teams in every draft, but you go, what? Who?
Yeah.
What? And I feel like the Saints are very consistent.
Sometimes it makes sense. It's a little bit weird. I think it needs a complete. I think you probably find that the GM needs to go and they need to bring in a new one and start all over again here. And that's why they're lacking depth. They just haven't got the depth in order to be able to do anything. And so you've got your guys like your Alvin Kamara and Derek Carr. Derek Carr's okay. I mean, as a starting quarterback, he's all right. But it's just not enough. And I think that's where the problem is. For the rest of this season, I think it's, I'd say start tanking, but it is start tanking, isn't it, really? I mean, there's no benefit for them to win games here. So it's almost like they need to start all over again.
Tonight.
Absolutely. So, that makes a lot of sense because obviously you're bringing in 3 picks from that trade. I know you're giving away 1 as well, but you're bringing in 3 picks. Basically make that team younger. You can't keep having running backs like Alvin Kamara at 29. As great as he is, there's going to be an end to it, and there isn't anyone coming through, and that's the problem. But for Dennis Allen specifically, I think a lot of us had him tipped, didn't we, as one of the first ones to be sacked. So it's not a massive surprise that he's gone, that it's all fallen apart. And to be honest, it's probably more of a surprise that it's taken as long as it has.
Well, they've never recovered from Sean and Drew going. They've never recovered from that.
No,
I don't think.
But again, you see, this was still when it comes to the drafting, you see, and all of that. It's always about the old player, not obviously like Drew Brees. They kept on going down the route of we'll put it into the future, and now it's like this is what happens when you do that.
Because he's been head coach now for 2 seasons, and he's gone 7-10 and 9-8, no playoff appearances. Like for me, when they hired him, he's been out there. He's been there for 9 seasons in this tenure, but he was there before, and he's been other places. But it felt to me like when they hired him, they were just like, "Who's been with Sean enough in the room?" And how can we keep him in the room even though he's not here? And this was the guy that was like, and also he was, and what's mad is he was the defensive coordinator and they've had one of the best defenses in the league for quite a long time. Very, very underrated, and yet they're like the 28th best defense this year. They are terrible on defense this year, and you're like, well, where's that all gone? Like, it was you who was doing it, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know how much he actually was.
Well,
It's
exactly.
a little bit.
Is
Yeah,
it like
you sort of think how
your
much
man in
was
Green Bay,
he
your man at
actually?
Green Bay and Jets? What's his name?
Yeah, well,
Nathaniel
it's a
Hackett.
little bit. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like it, but it's a little bit like I know Robert Saleh was sort of like in charge of the defense at the Jets, but at the same time he's head coach, so he can't be 100% on it, sort of thing. And it's the same sort of situation where it's like when you do that and you take that away, it's very difficult in order to be able to sort of be in charge of one, but also be the head coach as well and deal with other parts of it. It must be difficult. That's why you want a defensive head coach, sort of thing. I would. Well, I mean, I've been saying for years now that you only want to hire an OC as your head coach, for other reasons. But I think for when it comes to the defense, you want a guy who's going to focus on it rather than being on your head coach. But I think the reason that their defense has struggled a little bit, that obviously they've had injuries, everyone gets injuries and stuff like that. But if you actually look at who's there, I mean, Cam Jordan, how old is Cam Jordan now? I mean, he must be getting on. You've got Demario Davis, who's been around for a long time. You've got Willie Gay, who's been around for a long time. Tyrann Mathieu has been around for a long time. A lot of these guys are getting older, and you've got a team here who do not have the finances to replace, and also just haven't had the ability to pick the right guys in the draft to replace either. And so you're kind of been reliant on these guys for a long time, and it's just not really worked. I mean, some of them are all right. I think Brian Brzee, I think he was a good pick. He's been good for them. He's been all right. But there's very few of them. And that's where the problem comes in. And it's almost like if you have a 50-50 draft, and then obviously of them 50-50, high 50 are offense and 50 are defense, then there's not a big percentage left that are actually successful in your defense. So it's been difficult for them. And I think really they need to stop signing people like Alvin Kamara to further and further and further, because they're just keeping this problem going. And of course the problem is they've gone and done it again, and it's like you're just keeping this same problem all the time, and you need to just go, that's it, we're in a rebuild, and it's going to take a long time, but
he's
that's what
just
they
signed
need
a
to do.
2-year extension, right?
Yeah. So this is the problem, that doing that is not going to help you. It will help you now, but what good is helping you now when you're 2-7? You're not going anywhere. So it's almost like you need to just be like, this is it. We've got to go into the rebuild.
Going somewhere without a paddle, as some people may say.
Something like that.
Yeah. Let's. Our final section of this evening is obviously one of our very, very fun ones that I've really enjoyed doing the last few weeks. Actually, and I've had a few really good ones as well, to be fair. So first, we'll do the cold throne. Adam, this is obviously a section new to you, I suppose. So who is sitting on your ice cold throne this week?
So you got to help me out here, because I always get this confused. If it's cold, it means they've done well, yeah?
It's good, yes.
Okay,
it's very down with the kids, it's like cold parlor, that sort of thing. Yes.
So who I'm going for is I am going for Jesse Minter at the LA Chargers.
Okay.
This defense is taking the mickey. It truly is. And I said to you when we spoke about the Ravens, there was one other team that I think has the ability to compete. And I really do think that if the Chargers can sneak in as a wild card spot, they really do have the chance to compete here, because this defense is ridiculous. It really is. And they're not particularly flashy names, some of them, but they have been so good on both sides of the ball. And it's funny actually that it's not so much the front seven, it's the secondary that's really doing it. It's almost like they're like a python. They're just like really
Yeah.
crushing these other. You cannot score on this team. They are 8th when it comes to giving up rushing yards, and they're 11th when it comes to giving up passing yards. And these guys in the secondary, Asante Samuel, Derwin James has been great as well. But also, you know, up front, you've got your Joey Bosa's and your Khalil Max. They've been good. But, you know, Poona Ford has been brilliant for them this season as well. Tui Pelote, who I know me and Andrew both really liked when he came out the draft. He's been really good for them. And I mean, it is a little bit Harbour as well. It's not just Jesse Minter, but obviously they both kind of come in together. And I really do think that although the offense isn't fantastic, it's kind of like a bit of a typical Jim Harbaugh offense.
It's a Michigan offense.
Yeah, it is a Michigan offense, and it is. So it's not about scoring loads of points, but they put points up. And with this defense, I genuinely do believe that they have the potential to do something. And Jesse Minter has been there for 9 games, and he's doing a hell of a job in LA. So yeah, I'm going to go for him.
Nice. I like that a lot. That's very, very interesting. I'm going to go for probably a bit of an obvious one here, but it's obvious, but I'm going to enjoy it anyway. Man, DeAndre Hopkins is back. He is back. Like 8 receptions, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns, his best game of the season so far. He may be the difference of why this team goes to the Super Bowl now. Like like they had no one on offense. They were everyone getting injured. No Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, still just a speedster. People are saying, but I think he's got a bit more to him than that. You know, Travis Kelce had a quiet start to the season, but he's coming on to his own a bit. Having DeAndre Hopkins, a solid veteran wide receiver who's seen it all and has been regarded as one of the most solid wide receivers in the league for a long time as well. I think people will sort of forget about him now, but you know, people go on about Devontae Adams. I think Hopkins has got probably some of the strongest hands in the NFL still. He is back. He is looking great in this Chiefs offense. He has barely been in the building 5 minutes, and he's making games like this and making plays like he's doing already. It's like he's not missed a step, I don't think. The hot seat. Interesting. This one's interesting. I'm going to let you. Do you want me to go first on this one?
You can go first. I'll let you.
I'll go first. Geno Smith won't be the quarterback in Seattle much longer. I think, though he had a good game.
When you say much longer, do you mean as in this season?
I think he will. I think he will stay throughout this season. But I think what he was originally brought in for was to be a bridge quarterback, and actually the bridge has never come down. And Seattle just went, "Whoa, this bridge is actually all right. It's pretty stable, you know. Let the cars, the lorries get over it, the buses get over it. No one's like, it's not burnt down yet." I think this bridge is slowly starting to crumble. And like I said, though he was impressive, he had 21-34, 363 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 3 picks in his overtime loss to the Rams. You know, 1 win in the last 6. It's not looking great. I'm just thinking that sort of that sparkle has gone a little bit from Geno's step. I mean, I think it's time now for Seattle to start thinking about the off-season plan.
So he's had 10 interceptions on the season, which is joint highest with a certain Jordan Love. But he's had the most passing yards this season in the whole of the NFL. And I kind of
He's got 3 high-end wide receivers. He should have.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Like
Geno Smith is very middle of the road when it comes to quarterbacks in the NFL, I think. And I just wonder whether Seattle are going to find themselves in a position to be able to get a quarterback that's going to be good enough to replace him. That's the only thing.
They've made big trades before.
Yeah, I mean that's what it'll have to be, because I don't think there's anything in the draft that would make them want to go there, and they'd have to move up a lot. So yeah, it'd have to be a big trade to do it. But right, I've got to come up with someone who's really, really bad. Is that what we're going for? Okay,
that
cool.
is a hot seat, sir.
Hot seat, right? I'm going Zach Orr, just to be the same as my defensive coordinators. I thought I'd stick with it. I'm going Zach Orr, Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator. I think it's going to cost them. At the end of the day, I think that is what. Yeah, I think that the thing that is going to stop them from winning the Super Bowl is that this passing defense just cannot stop anything. They're currently 32nd when it comes to giving up passing yards, averaging 280 yards a game, which is a hell of a lot compared to other teams. I mean, it doesn't take very, I'm top 11, top 12 are less than 200 yards a game, and yet this team's nearly up to 300. I mean, they're closest to Jacksonville. Jacksonville are better when it comes to giving up passing yards. It's a serious problem. I think that as great as this offense is, and as great as they are going to be probably for the rest of this season, if you cannot stop the pass, then you are not going to get anywhere. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to end up against a team like the Chargers, who will slow down your offense, or the Chiefs, who will slow down your offense, and you just won't be able to stop them, because and I think that game against the Bengals where they won 41-38, it maybe takes a while, but we're halfway through now, and there's been no sign of any improvement from this secondary of the Ravens. And I think that Zach Orr and possibly a little bit John Harbaugh as well, depending on who's calling it, but I think Zach Orr is the one who's calling them, and I think that's going to affect them come the end of it.
I sort of lost you with your Wi-Fi, but I have every confidence that whatever you said made sense. So don't worry. I trust you, my friend. I'm sure it made complete sense, and I'm sure you have your reasons for it. Adam, thank you for joining me this evening on a Tuesday. A different show for you. You will be back over the weekend with the betting show with Andrew, and Alex will be returning Thursday with the college show as well. I will be in Munich. I'm flying to Munich tomorrow, which is very exciting. So I'll be at the presses for the New York Giants, hopefully going to the NFL Academy game as well, and then also the game between the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants at the Allianz Arena on Sunday. I'm very, very excited for it. So we've got lots of content coming your way, as well as our usual programming. Until then, we'll see you all very soon, and have a good rest of your week.